You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. We're glad you can join us for episode 49. My name is Clark from 5Card Guys on Instagram, and with me, as always, is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John at Trade You at Recess. So last week, we all attended the live local card show here in the Toronto area. So I wanted to take a moment off the top of this episode to talk about our experience at the show and if we saw any trends while we were there. Okay, so first, Hyung, you set up a booth representing Integrity Sports Cards. Just want to ask you, what was that like? And what did you end up buying, selling, or trading at the show?
The hobby is alive in Toronto. It was packed. Yeah. It was an awesome show. I was really happy with kind of like the output, because essentially it's the people that create the community, right? So if you have a good group of people, you're going to always have successful shows. And I think that's what stood out the most, is people were actually enjoying themselves, having a great time. It was kind of like you could see the weather getting better. You could see the energy. Honestly, there was this kid that was hustling like he was, oh my goodness.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
It's this guy needs to, be, on a higher platform, because he took my Austin Matthews PSA 10 off of me. I was like, how? And he was this young little kid, but I mean, he was a lot of kids hustling out there, with their collection. I was actually happy to see that. A lot of family or people bringing their families. Overall, it was an amazing kind of day. The weather's getting better. Springtime's, happening in Toronto. I believe that helps as well. As well as obviously the start to the MLB season as well. So you had a bunch of everything, I think, there in terms of sports. A lot of baseball, obviously. A lot of hockey still being in Toronto. A lot of actually like Pokemon and stuff like that. F1 was hot. WWE as well. You've seen a lot of stuff with that, and a lot of vendors that were selling wax and stuff. But a lot of trades going on overall. I know I've made a couple deals because trades are awesome, because I think that's a way you could really profit. And move cards around, because I think timing of certain cards could be good for a certain individual in a trade, and it works for both parties if the timing's right. And I think you could really profit and kind of better your hand at card shows. I think that's the whole point, right? So I encourage people to set up booths. It costs relatively, not a lot of money. I think the smaller card shows, local card shows, they don't charge as much. So I think it's definitely worth it. Just, having, a big community of, fellow thinkers and hobbyists and, investors and even newcomers to the hobby, just seeing, new people come in. They're like, this is my first card show. I love it. They have their backpacks, they have their slabs, So it was very positive to see. I had a blast. It was tiring. We set up. It was a 1-day show, right? So we set up early in the morning, but literally I talked from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. nonstop with somebody about cards, right? So it was crazy, but overall amazing.
It's fun, yeah, for sure. And if you have a big collection like you do, Hyung, it makes sense to have a booth. I know you had like a lot of different sports, like like hockey, baseball, basketball. Did people ask a lot about a certain sport when at the card show? Or
they're looking for a bit of everything. Like you had kind of like a mixture of a lot of collectors, even people that dealt like I guess baseball normally. I used to be strictly baseball, but the fact that I've diversified into multiple sports, it's I enjoy it more because I see it's a different crowd as well. and I don't mind it because my purpose is a little different. I started, Integrity Sports Card with the intention of trying to, at least on my end, solve liquidity and be able to, use marketing tactics to, maximize on bids, right? So for me, I like to bring those types of cards in, and because I see it as a sound investment, so I would like to almost pass that on. And if I could keep on repeating it, I could, create liquidity at least on people that want to cash out as well, right? So creating avenues that way. So I like to diversify. I think it's great. Even for collectors to dabble into kind of multiple sports. I think it goes hand in hand with timing of the seasons as well. So baseball off season, you basketball complements it perfectly, and there's now soccer and F1 that starts early on the year before you get the baseball and the in between football. So I think it's great. The hobby's alive and well, and the card shows are the avenues that pump that blood into into the whole body, right? So
yeah, for sure, it was cool. Johnny, how about you? You got to walk around, so is there anything you observed in terms of what people were selling at different booths, and were you able to buy anything?
Yeah, I mentioned last week or a couple of weeks ago that Luka was my main target. Fortunately, I didn't see anything that I liked. It was great though, because this particular sports card show, the inaugural one was last year, right in around the winter time, and it was like a quarter the size. So when I walked in there to see how much bigger it had gotten, it was pretty incredible. And just seeing the number of people walking around versus the last time, I'm sure their little entry fee ticket sales were astronomical versus the last time. So it was really great to see. And Hyung mentioned it, springtime, that has a lot to do with everybody's psyche and their morale and how they're feeling, and their excitement. So that helped. It was interesting when I walked in, because I got there a lot later than I wanted to, but you guys were set up for quite a while. And interesting how when I first walked in there, I was bringing out my cards and talking to the both of you, and you guys had mentioned, it seems like people are looking for basketball. I was fully expecting there to be a lot more of a baseball surge, but clearly, and we mentioned this before too, we felt like basketball was making, the prices aren't quite on the up and up for the most part, but it looks like the sales are on the up and up. So it looks like basketball is really trying to make a comeback. So, and you can feel that energy at the show too. I think everybody was trying to deal. There's a lot of basketball this time around, a lot more than baseball. And of course, there's the usual suspects that, we're seeing so much more F1 than we did last time. Yeah, I do see the difference though between the main card show in June, the Toronto Expo versus a smaller, because the cost to be a dealer at these shows is a lot less. At the smaller shows, you're going to see a lot of smaller tables. There's going to be a lot of guys like us, like, well, not Hyung, but guys like Clark and myself with maybe smaller collections. Yeah. It can be worth it to kind of borrow one small table and showcase your collection, right? So you are seeing a lot of smaller tables. I saw actually it's cool to see, but there's a lot of kids, kind of like almost like, it was kind of cute. They're like kind of setting up like little lemonade stands, sort of.
Right.
So it's good to see. It's not like they're holding like monster cards or anything, but it was cool to see like kids kind of getting involved, getting a taste of like the business, or like the business side of, and learning firsthand, like where else can you get that kind of experience, right? So it was cool to see that. And then, you're not going to see these kids at the main show and at the expo, because the cart, to rent a table there is going to be pretty expensive, right? So
yeah, that's true. No, I mean, I think you guys hit on all the main points. I wrote that basketball cards were definitely more popular at this show. Like you guys said, F1, there are several booths that had F1 cards. So generally more diversity in the type of cards that were out there, not just hockey like we're used to.
Right.
Hyung was gracious enough to lend us some space to, show my 10 slabs that I had on me. but at the last show that we went to, I only had 4 or 5, so I've already doubled my collection.
Nice.
And by the time June comes around for the Sports Card Expo, I'm hoping to double that again.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes. But I did sell my Blue Wave Bichette, which
Nice.
so there you go, 1 baseball card sold. And yeah, like it was funny because when Johnny walked in, I'm like, yeah, a lot of people are coming to the booth asking for basketball, and 90% of my collection is baseball, and I have like I have a Jayson Tatum green prism true gem, which is nice. And actually a lot of people were asking about that green prism Tatum and the Mookie Betts red foil. Like color match cards are definitely popping. Like
Right,
a lot of
for
like
sure.
people are just pointing it out. When they see it in person, it's like, yeah, that looks cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just a lot different than seeing on screen on eBay.
Right.
And I think that's also what's cool about local card shows, like to have it in your hand and to see it
Right.
in person. It's another feeling, right? So
Yeah.
no, I had a good time too. Like Hyung mentioned right off the top, like a lot more people than I probably expected. And it was like I was only there for half the time that Hyung was there, and I was like tired by like 5 o'clock.
I was pretty exhausted. Yeah.
And the Sports Card Expo was a 3-day affair, so
Right.
I don't know how that's gonna work out.
Yeah.
We need to build up our stamina or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of the Sports Card Expo coming up in June, which is a huge one, is there anything you guys would do differently in terms of prepping for that show, for a bigger show, or is it more of the same for you guys?
I think what I could recommend is having like whether you have a booth or you're going in as a guest, having a good inventory. Like look at slabs as trade bait almost, right? If and sometimes you have a card that you're happy to part with, but you could find great value in it. That's why you bring your slabs, and it becomes one huge massive trade expo that ends up becoming. I remember we had a blast in November, and that was when the weather was a little cold too. So June is perfect weather in Toronto. I assume you're gonna get a lot of people traveling, even coming from outside Toronto,
for sure,
for vacation, and then you double up with this. So I think it's going to be an awesome show. So I would prepare with slabs. The currency is slabs and cash at card shows. There's nothing else. Maybe crypto, but for the most part, slabs and cash.
Agreed. How about you, John?
Yeah, I'll agree. Not much more to say. I think, I think before I used to think, get prepared and make sure all your comps. But ain't nobody got time for that. You just let your customers tell you the comps, and then you'll go from there.
Yeah, you just need to double check it sometimes because people's comps are a little off sometimes.
Yeah.
You're like, it's $500. You check it, it's like 100. You're like, what?
These 13-year-old kids just hustling you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but these kids, like one of them's like, one of them wanted to buy my Lewis Robert base, Bowman Chrome base auto, PSA 10. And then he's like, I listed for 3,000. So I listed more on the upper end.
You're right.
And then he's showing me like comps. He's like, January it sold for this much. March it sold for this much. So like you can't, they're definitely more educated when it comes to that.
I think that was the same guy who wheeled and dealed my McKinney, or the Austin Matthews little guy, eh? I'd like, oh man.
No, he knows how to hustle. And
For
then
sure.
but yeah, no, that was cool to see that they know what they're looking for and they know the comps already. And but yeah, I'm with you, Hyung. I'm looking to load up on more slabs for the next show. I was trying to get a trade done or a deal done at one of these higher end tables. Like I got offered for that Lewis Robert that I was talking about and my Vlad Bowman Chrome first base auto True Gem.
Whoa.
Combined for $5,000. So it's kind of a lower offer than I wanted.
Right.
I might have done it for $6,000, $6,500. But then I saw Fernando Tatis Bowman Chrome first auto True Gem. He listed it in his case for $4,000. So I was really tempted, but couldn't make it work. I don't want to part with both Lewis and Vlad for Tatis and something else. But for the bigger card show, definitely more opportunities, right?
For sure.
To find good deals, and I'm sure you'll find that Luka, John, at the
I
June
hope so.
show.
I hope so.
All right, cool. Let's move on now then to hobby headlines. If you missed last week's episode, we welcomed Scotty B Cards back to the podcast, and we did a pretty deep dive looking at the wins above replacement, or WAR stat, to see which veteran baseball players were a good investment in the hobby. So you should definitely check that episode out if you missed it. This week, now that MLB is officially underway, I wanted to do a segment looking at 5 players who are off to a hot start. And I want to know if you're buying or selling or fading them. Yes, it's all based on just 1 week of games. So it's an overreaction kind of thing. But, sometimes you just got to go with your gut, right? So I'll go through this list of 5 and you tell me what you're doing with them. All right. First, Alex Bregman. He came in hot, top prospect. If you remember, he had the 31 home run season. Then there was that cheating scandal, followed up with a 41 home run season. And then there was the shortened COVID year. Then last year, I believe he was injured, so he didn't play a whole season. And then he's kind of fallen off a little bit. Like his Bowman Chrome First Auto prices kind of probably got cut by 30-40%. But here we are again, new season, new full season. And to start off the season, he's gone 7-for-18, 2 homers with a 421 OBP. So what are you doing with Bregman? Are you back all in on Bregman? What do you think?
I think Bregman got hurt. Really, his prices really tanked after, especially with the whole Houston ordeal, with the World Series and cheating and stuff like that. So, I think I always thought Bregman had extreme value. Houston Astros never get hobby love. You look at like guys like Yordan Alvarez. They could do whatever, they could hit 300 with 30 home runs and they still don't, get any hobby love, right? So I believe that's where, Alex Bregman falls into that category. He's still young. He still has a lot of years to play and a lot of stats to, pad before he gets a consideration into kind of like a Hall of Fame name. But I think he's a solid player. I think he's one of the hitters that, are so underrated. And you could tell by his plate discipline with his walks and strikeouts. Anytime, a player is close to 1-to-1, in their walks to strikeout ratio, like Juan Soto is going to have more walks and strikeouts. It's incredible to do that at the major league level, right? So that's a good sign that, he's going to always be around just because his discipline as a hitter. So he's going to hit. I personally like Bregman. I think he's really, really cheap, but if you're expecting, a quick flip, I don't think you're gonna get the volatility with Bregman unless he, pulls off MVP seasons. And even then, I don't think you're gonna see like crazy prices. But I think long term, as he matures as a player, you're gonna have to make that decision whether you lock a card in the safe, that type. And I think you see it with a lot of these players after 10-15 years in the league. You don't see their cards available, because people are like, what, this guy had a great career, I'm locking him in the safe. I think Bregman's kind of in that where in the next 5 years or so you're not going to really see any price action. But I believe he's a great buy in terms of value for sure.
That's fair. Yeah.
For me, Bregman is kind of in that change my mind lull, where he needs to do something big, MVP, another championship. Something different has to really happen because I think everybody kind of sees. Number one, he's very solid. He's been very consistent, and everybody sees that. But at this point, I think people are understanding he is who he is. Right? There's no reason for his card to. It doesn't look like there's any reason for his card to be that volatile. So unless you're a fan of Bregman, I don't see really any reason. Like for myself, I'm not a fan. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Probably a more accurate word is like I'm indifferent.
Right.
And if you're on my stance, I think it's much better to take your money and put it into something that could be volatile, like our show favorite, somebody like Luis Robert. He's also low, but then he has the opportunity for that hype train to kind of explode, right? So unless you're a really, really big fan, I don't see any reason. But in terms of like long term, yeah, like it could go up slowly. But again, I think for those that are buying Bregman, or if you think that you should buy Bregman, I think it's purely, I like Bregman. I would enjoy some of his cards. I think that's the type of buyer. And then if it appreciates, good on you. That's a bonus on top. Take some profits and then move it into something else. But in terms of like, something where we're predicting, a 2x, something like that in value, I don't see it. I think he's just going to continue to stay solid, not really surprise anybody in any way. Who knows? What do I know? But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on Alex Bregman.
All right. I think we're spending too much time on Alex Bregman, but I'll say this. I love Alex Bregman. I actually had his first Bowman card. When I got back into the hobby, is one of those first slabs that I got.
He was hot then.
Yeah, right. And it, it was like $125 at the time, and I'm like, oh shoot, that's a lot of money. But $125 at the time, and then I sold it for $350 right before the scandal got kind of like
Nice.
So I just lucked out on timing.
Nice.
And then I just checked his price now. It's around $200. So I think it's a good buy, cheap, and sure, it's not going to have the volatility. But I feel like for people that don't have a lot of money or their budget is, lower than $1,000, I don't think it's a bad play. $200, I could see that going to $300 by the end of the season if he hits 30 plus homers, solid average, and the Houston Astros, I feel like, have a pretty good team this year too. So, I think he's a, safer piece to invest in if you have a lower budget. All right. Okay. Next guy. Are you going to take a flyer on Stephen Kwan? I'm going to be honest. I had no idea who Stephen Kwan was until he went 10 for 15 to start off the year, 750 OBP. Obviously, he's not going to keep it up, but I mean, the guy can hit like contact wise.
Yeah.
He's so new. Like the only cards on the market for him is his Tops Now,
right?
Recent achievement, So, and that's going for $30-$40, which is probably high. But
I believe he was a college guy, so he's a little older, mature. Unbelievable player. Like you could tell the type of player he is. He's gonna be a game changer. But for me, I'm off of him. I think there's gonna be initial hype this year just because he's entering with a storm and with card releases. You'll see his rookie cards this year. So obviously there's gonna be some kind of chase. But I believe in the long run, I don't see until he marks his spot for full seasons and he does it year after year. Right. I can't say that I'm going to invest in someone like him, right? I mean, kudos to Stephen Kwan. Like he's made a name for himself in the short amount of games in a short period of time, and he's balling out like no other right now. So I'm enjoying watching him, and I'm rooting for him, but not with my wallet.
Now, if we find out that he's Korean, maybe that's a different story.
Nah, sell.
Sell it to a Korean.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he might be Chinese, but anyways, I think that, to be honest, I think the hype train will die down even before his flagship rookie comes out. So this could all just be meaningless conversation. But had he had a card right now, I don't know, if it was super cheap and the hype, it wasn't a super hype train, I probably would have taken a little. I wouldn't have mind taking a flyer on it. But yeah, if there was a card now, I could have imagined it like 5xing instantly from $1 to $5.
All you needed was 100 of those cards, right? Or 1,000.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. It's a pass. Like, obviously a historic start, 10 for 15, but it's gonna go down, and like he doesn't have any power. He's just a pure contact hitter. So unless he bats 500 or 400 even, then he's not really gonna make a dent.
Oh, he reminds me of that guy. Who was that guy on Chicago last year? Mercedes.
Oh yeah.
Like he came out on fire, and everyone was looking for his cards. This is kind of
look at his cards now, right?
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. All right. Speaking of White Sox, our Lewis Robert. We love talking about Lewis Roberts. We love Lewis Robert as a player, 5-tool, and we were waiting for this moment. Healthy, and he's come out of the gate 6 for 16. Already hit a homer. He's 4 stolen bases. That's pretty impressive. So I'm asking, are you buying Lewis Robert now? Like it's already high, compared to the other cards. Do you think it'll go even higher? Or if you have any Lewis Robert cards, is this a good sell opportunity?
I think it's a great sell opportunity for his main cards. So his Bowman Chromes and his cards that hold a lot of value. I think there's a lot of value in his lower end stuff that I think it's cheap because of the hit he took last year. It's kind of like that Vladdy story again, where it's the next year after the slump season, his prices go back up, but they're not nearly where it was before. So it has a lot of time to play catch up. So I still think he's a buy on certain cards, even certain high end stuff. I think at that point you just see value because at the end of the day, I believe in Luis Robert as a player. He's a perfect marriage of a 5-tool player and a guy that can actually be a game changer for a meaningful team. So I like the lineup that Chicago White Sox have, the young team, and it's going to really help his stats and running the bases and sparking that offense and being a leader on that Chicago White Sox team. So there's a lot of things going for Luis Robert, especially with the big investment right out the gate from the Chicago White Sox. So it's a perfect marriage. Obviously, there's risk to it. People question his injuries and stuff, and his prices are high on some, but you only see, baseball's fun. That's all I got to say. With Luis Robert, Acuna, Soto, Tatis, Vladdy, Bichette, Julio Rodriguez, Bobby Witt, Wander Frank, like the list goes on and on. So it's just add to that. Like I'm in on Luis Robert because he's one of those guys that can, are part of those guys. And those guys are the volatility 5-tool players that you kind of want.
Yeah. It looks like Luis Robert has picked up where he left off in terms of hitting. He's off to a really solid start again. I think this year, you can tell, and he changed his swing, and he even changed his stance last year. And I think I will assume the batting coach or whoever's working with him last year kind of wanted him to work on timing and contact more than swinging with power. So you can even see in his swing a lot of times he's not even letting go of the one hand. He's keeping 2 hands on the bat. You can see that he's trying to make contact, and it worked out. I think this year, if he gets more confident and he starts hitting some bombs like he's capable of, and clearly he's starting to steal bases again. Last year, I think coming off of the injury, he looked very tentative. You knew he wasn't going to overexert himself, but he's off to a hot start. And the other day, he got a walk and stole 2 bases within the same inning. And if he continues this line, I think his cards, we all know Luis Robert being a 5-tool kind of guy, pricing wise, has the opportunity for his prices to get into the same stratosphere as Vladdy, Tatis, Acuna, like the big boys. And that's whoever's a fan of Luis Robert, that's what you're hoping. So the ceiling is there. We'll see whether he hits it this year, but yeah. I still think he's a pretty good buy. The price is high and there's a lot of risk involved right now, but I think we believe in him enough to say that he's a buy.
Sure. I feel like we've been in the off season, we've been telling people to buy Luis Robert enough. So if you didn't listen, you're paying a bit of a premium now. But yeah, like he's exciting to watch. I think for me, like because I have one, I'm not going to add to it. I just wanted to ride it out. And I was actually telling a guy at the card show that he's my Shohei from last year, a guy I invested in, thinking that if he just stays healthy for the whole year and he does what he can do, then you're going to see a nice return by the end of the season. And it worked out for me with Shohei. Lewis is that guy for me this year. So on the offseason, that's why I got the Bowman Chrome First Auto for like $16.95 or something like that. PSA 10. And, I've already seen it listed for almost $3,000 on eBay. So, I'm just hoping that he's healthy the whole year. And then I think that's going to be a monster card. Especially his first Bowman Chrome Auto. All right. Okay. This next guy, there's not a lot of players that can hit 50 home runs easily in a full season. Vladdy and Shohei almost did it, but Giancarlo Stanton, can certainly do it. He certainly has the power. he's not, he's batting 250, but he already has 2 home runs. But if you look at last year, he hit 35 home runs and 97 RBIs in just over 500 at bats. So he did have a period of injury. But again, one of those guys, if he has 600 at bats, yeah, we could see a monster season like he did that one time in Miami. What do you think? And if you look at his Bowman Chrome, it's like, I think it's under 500 now.
It's like 250.
No way.
Yeah. So which is super cheap. But I think he's a buy. Stanton's he's gonna be a Hall of Famer because he's gonna hit 500 home runs. He's gonna do that probably within the next 5-6 years. And that's how many home runs he's hit already, which is crazy, right? So I think he's a buy just because he's a Yankee and he's essentially going to hit 500 home runs. And when you're in that category, I think that's a pretty special company. And at the end of the day, $250 is pretty cheap for a first Chrome auto. So I think he's a buy.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's a hold, but Hyung convinced me with the $250. If you're, I think if you're a big baseball guy, me being more on the casual side, obviously I have a limited amount of budget of where I spend my money. So for baseball, I'm gonna try to spend it on some of the big boys, and I'm gonna move some money into hockey and basketball, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're a big baseball guy, and 90% of your collection is baseball, and that's where you spend your money, I think it's definitely a why not. Take a flyer. It's not too much money in your pocket, and it's something that could go up. And especially if you're somewhat of a fan and you enjoy watching him, hey, why not, right? So yeah. I think that's where I stand on him.
Yeah, like for me, it's always the injury risk. Like, you never know what kind of season he's going to get, but yeah, at the price of 250, 300, it seems like low risk for what he's already accomplished, like Hyung said,
right.
And the potential of what he can do if he does stay healthy. So for me, it's worth that gamble. All right, lastly, as we were recording, Clayton Kershaw just pitched 7 innings, perfect game. For some reason, the Dodgers pulled him out after 80 pitches. I know people are upset about that, and yeah, 13 Ks in the process. Kershaw, like I had a fantasy draft the other day, and Kershaw's being drafted as like the 25th pitcher just because injury issues.
Wow,
but
really?
Coming out of the gate, 7 innings pitched, no hitter, no walks, 13 Ks. Yeah, are you investing? We say like pitchers are risky, but at Kershaw's about $1,000. It's kind of actually gone down. His Bowman Chrome back to $1,000 for BGS 9510. What are you guys doing with Kershaw?
I like Kershaw. I think he's one of the best pitchers in today's game, like period. He's 3-time Cy Young winner. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's already put up an incredible. He retires right now. He's an amazing career. He had an amazing career. I think he has a lot left in the tank as well. So my initial thoughts with all this is always long-term investment, right? So
sure.
I always look at when we're talking about these, older generational players, I'm not interested in the flip. That's why I like the modern players for the volatility, because I don't need to it's not a 10-year hold where, but I view it as like guys like Kershaw, because like I said, once, these guys start getting into that, upper end of their career, of Hall of Fame career, that's when you don't see a lot of their cards available for sale, right? So I think long-term play, I think it's a no-brainer. He's one of the best in the game. He's fun to watch, and it's unfortunate that he was pulled out. I know because of pitch count, but that just adds on to his legacy, essentially what he's done. And I don't know how old he is now, but he has to be reaching up there. But yeah, he's a little expensive right now, and I think just monitoring prices on his Bowman Chrome auto, I think if you buy at the dip, you just sit, hold it and enjoy kind of his career.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. The only knock on Kershaw in the past was he was one of, it's kind of like the best regular season pitcher And then once it came to playoffs, he would just underperform. And he's now finally got that championship that people thought he couldn't get. And he's sort of, I think after that moment, he sort of cemented his legacy from here on in, right? So I think he's well on his way to becoming, getting into that legend status in terms of one of the all-time greats. So I think at any point from now until the end of his retirement, it's not every day that you would recommend a pitcher, but he is one of the best that we've seen in the modern day. And I think he's definitely worth putting some money into.
Yeah, and I wanted to throw him out because he is a pitcher, and we know how we feel about pitchers, especially long term. But if there's one pitcher that kind of, in today's game,
right,
you feel confident about getting a good ROI, Kershaw's definitely on the short list. So I agree. And really impressive what he did. I hope he can continue it for the rest of the season. And I think he's like Verlander, like the older guys, the smart pitchers, they change their selection. They know how to,
they get better and better every year.
Totally.
It's insane.
They know they can't throw 90, 95 anymore, but
doesn't have to be gas,
they
man.
just perfect different pitches and go at batters that way. So Kershaw's definitely a smart pitcher.
I believe he has a 2.49 ERA, career ERA, which is ridiculous.
crazy.
I just wanted to mention that. That's
insane,
just ridiculous.
It's like mowing down trees.
Mowing
man. Oh my God.
every year for the last 20 years or whatever, 15 years.
Love it. All right, cool. Okay, let's move from the opening week of baseball to the NBA playoffs for our next segment we call Fast Five. So now that we're in the thick of NBA playoffs, there are some interesting players who I think can see their card prices take a jump if they're expected to make a deep playoff run. And I can also see some of the card prices being at its peak right now because the price of them making it into the playoffs in the first place, it's kind of already baked in. So I'm going to give you another list of 5 players, and you tell me which direction you think their card prices will go. All right, so let's start off with Ja Morant. A lot of hype on Memphis Grizzlies. Even at the card show, we've seen a lot of Ja Morant prices are already up there. But a lot of people are expecting the Grizzlies to be one of those exciting teams to watch in the playoffs. What do you think of Morant in terms of his prices now?
Certain cards are obviously high. The ones that everybody want are high.
Silver Prism.
Yeah, Prism in general, I think. Your Prism in general, your contenders.
Yeah.
Some of his optic numbered. So that's probably at more of a peak. I say buy value, buy the good deals. There's secondary cards that are great cards that have a lot of legs. And if you believe in Ja as a player, especially if he takes Memphis deep into a playoff run, I think those smaller kind of cards like we talked about in baseball, like the Bowman's Best and the Topps Finest, you don't need the first chrome always. There's value in those cards. I think Ja is in the same situation. There's some cards of Ja, of his lower end stuff that are still very, very affordable. And I think if he makes a good run in the playoffs, I think you could make some profit there as well.
All right. So it's lower tier cards. There might be value there. Okay.
Yep. I'm the opposite way. I'm a sell. And I'll save everybody some time. I'm a sell on everybody on the list. And I say that because this is the time to take advantage. And, if you sell now, you might not be able to take profits if he goes deep into the playoffs. But I think it's safer. And Clark, you and I are a lot more safer, and I think it's just better to kind of safely take profits as soon as you can, rather than trying to take the risk of trying to profit and maximize the profit. And some people might say, Ja Morant cards, they've gone kind of stale. They're not actually up. But I will bet you anything that you can sell it right now. So if you had Prism at 2K and the last one's sold middle of March for 2K, you've been listing your card right now for 2K or the past couple of weeks, and it hasn't been selling because people don't want to. Number one, people always want to steal. They want some sort of deal. And number two, people don't want to be holding the bag. So everybody kind of plays with this very cautious approach to purchasing. But right now, if you listed it for 2K or whatever, I'm sure you could sell it. You might not get more than the last comp, but at least you're selling, boom, like you're selling quick and you're selling on the comp. So I think this is the best time to sell, especially on the hype of the playoffs. Yeah, you might not maximize, but there's also the danger of getting cute. Like there's a lot of stories of what happened during the Super Bowl. Everybody listed and their auctions were ending Saturday night before the Super Bowl because they wanted to maximize that profit. And I heard so many stories of the winner will win and not pay until the Super Bowl is over, and somebody like Joe Burrow loses and it's like, I'm not going to pay. Clearly the card's going to be down like 40% now, right? So don't, I would say don't be cute and yeah.
Okay.
John Morant, I think his bigger cards and his rarer cards, obviously, if you're holding like a Prism Gold or something insane, it's not a sell because you believe in the kid long term. But if you're holding some of the liquid stuff, some of the smaller stuff, I think it's a great time. I think it's a great time to take advantage.
I agree. No, I agree with John in this case. I think like the silver prisms for sure are going to be really liquid now. People are FOMOing,
Right.
as the prices get higher. So I'm a definitely sell for Ja Morant in particular. Like I've seen his price really spike in the last month and a half,
right.
Just because going into the playoffs he's been hot, and you're already seeing that peak. All right, we already know what John's going to say for the next four. He says, but Anthony Edwards, I bring him up because the Timberwolves pulled a impressive win against the Clippers last night, and I always liked Ant-Man, and at the first card show that we're talking about earlier in December, like it was going for 2,000, and the card shows now or on eBay it's going for about 750, 800. I think with this victory you're gonna probably find it for 1,000, so it's gonna go back up a little bit, but it's not as crazy as Ja Morant. Like Anthony Edwards is already pushing downward until this recent playoff success. So yeah, what do you guys think? I'll start off first. If it's under 1,000 still, I'm going to try to scoop one up until, and then, because I think I'll hold, I'm not going to do a quick flip, I'll hold it for the off season. And I like Anthony Edwards as a player. And I think, as he gets better in his game, which I believe he will, that it'll trend upwards even in through 2022, 2023. So that's what I'm doing. But yeah.
Were you talking about Silver Prism, PSA 10?
Silver Prism, sorry. That's
they go
PSA
for
10.
750, damn.
Yeah, and his optic hollow was selling for 350. I think that's really cheap.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's like reasonable for optic hollow. I know it's if you look at like comparables, like we bring up Trae Young, and compare what Trae Young has done, and you see that Anthony Edwards still on the upper end of the spectrum of
Sure.
inflated cards as opposed to Trae, but I like Anthony Edwards is like a guy that's like a Luis Robert to me in baseball, where you have the combination that you're gonna get that liquidity, right? So he's a guy that he's perfect to cash out. People want him, especially the silver, whether it's a prism or optic hollow. People are gonna want him, so I think it's still reasonably priced, and you could easily get an optic hollow for 350 and use it at a local show as a trade bait for a little higher, right, where it seals that deal, right? So I like Anthony Edwards both as a player and because he falls into kind of like the same category as Ja Morant. You got the volatility, you got kind of like the demand that causes that volatility, and you got an exciting player to watch. So I'm a buy, especially on that the lower end stuff. I think always the higher end stuff is a sell or hold, because they're not going to ever go down, right? But you're going to get a little bit of volatility with the lower end stuff, just because some of the stuff is so cheap that people don't even know they exist, right? And then once people go on that chase, they're going to go after, the Illusions or the Chronicles or, the sets that nobody wants, right? Happened to Luka too, right? Once they're priced out of the Prisms, right? So, I like him. I think he's a buy.
Nice.
Yeah. You know what? I agree with you guys. I didn't realize his cards were that low, but I'm still going to say sell. But I agree that he's a buy. I think Anthony Edwards is an upper echelon player that has the potential to become like a top 10, top 15 NBA. He is that kind of a talent. So overall, he's a buy. Like just to see that his prism's at 750 and his optic would be at 350. I would say overall he's a buy, but right now I would guess that it'd be hard to find his prices at that mark. I would guess. So whatever buzz that's happening now with the Timberwolves, like the Timberwolves never get buzz, and they're getting buzz, and they're gonna face, who are they gonna face? They're gonna face the Grizzlies. I think they got a shot, but are you willing to take that risk, right? So might as well take advantage of that buzz right now. And then I think if they get knocked out first round, then that card's going back to 750, I think, very easily. And the optic is going to go back down to 350 very easily. So there's going to be an opportunity to get into Anthony Edwards. I just don't think it's right now.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll go through these next three veterans quickly. Kyrie Irving, Brooklyn Nets. No one wants to play the Nets, right? So, what do you guys think?
He's a buy for me.
Yeah,
he's a buy. Yeah, he's kind of like the long-term buy, I guess. I'm not looking for a flip. I'm looking for, okay, if I'm investing in players that I think have had Hall of Fame careers, he's a guy that is on pace, and his consistency is crazy. He's putting up 27 again, this year, which is nuts, especially the adversity he had to kind of deal with, and I think he's relatively cheap compared to all his, counterparts. So I'm a buy for Kyrie.
Cool. Yeah, his PSA 10, I think it's 2012 Prism is about 450 right now. So, right. John, you're still a sell?
Yeah. Let's not waste time. Sell.
Right, let's go.
Take advantage of the liquidity. Sell it.
I'm a sell too with Kyrie in particular. Like, he's so erratic. I don't know where he's gonna play next. He's very I don't disagree about his skills. Like, he's got the best handles in the sport. But I don't know if it's off the court antics will impact his price. So, I have a Kyrie Irving PSA 9. I told you guys that before. I hope Brooklyn Nets goes deep into the playoffs so I can sell. That's my plan. All right. Joel Embiid of the Sixers. He's always had a knock of not performing well in the playoffs. Buy for Hyung, sell for John?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we talked about Joel Embiid in a previous podcast too.
It's just too cheap. He's just too cheap. Center's getting no love, but
Center's getting no love.
True.
But
true.
He's gonna put up a good career, and I think it's 100. I didn't check the prices for his Prism, but I would imagine it's below. It's a couple $100 or something like that. So I think it's like super, super cheap.
I'm right on the fence with Embiid. I guess I'm always going to be the tiebreaker for this segment.
Right in the middle. Huh?
And they're playing the Raptors, so I hate to say it, the Sixers probably can beat the Raptors. I'm hoping not. He seems a bit cheap, so I wouldn't mind a flyer on Embiid at his current prices. Lastly, Jayson Tatum, Celtics. They finished strong in the regular season. Who are they playing in the first round? I'm gonna double check, but anyway, Tatum.
I love Tatum. He's a buy. His I think he's superstar. Like, he's a guy that's like superstar potential. I'm still excited to see what he does in the next few years. But you're seeing, like, last couple of years with Tatum, his prices kind of went sideways and down, right? So I think it's a great opportunity. Even cards like that green prism before. Those green prisms are so hot. The color match now they're somewhat affordable. So I think it's a great time to pick up a Tatum before he does, crazy stuff.
So Celtics finished second, and they're going to face the Nets. So you might want to change your opinions.
Sell. Sell right away.
Yeah.
No, I we know what John's going to do, but I feel like I agree. Like, for me, Tatum, I bought him on that dip that Hyung was just talking about, where it went sideways and it went down. That's how I got the green Prism True Gem. But he's a long-term hold for me. Like, I think it's gone up a little bit because of the Celtics' hot finish to the season. But if you're holding him long-term, I think it's a good time to get him now, because I think he's just going to add to his legacy. All right, that's our Fast Five. Hopefully that helped you out. It'll be exciting to watch the NBA playoffs, especially the younger guys. I'm looking forward to seeing Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards, just to get that experience and just to see what they can do when games really count. So we'll see how that goes. And we'll follow up this segment in the near future. All right, let's end off this episode with our regular weekly feature we call Pick One. And this week it's our hot takes edition. So we're going to put up 2 hobby hot takes and we're going to debate which one is more likely to happen. All right, so Hyung, do you want to start things off?
Let's do it. I'm going to go Bichette is a better investment than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. versus Bryce Harper is a better investment than Juan Soto.
Ooh.
So Bichette is a better investment than Vladimir Guerrero. Hey, but obviously it doesn't necessarily mean that, it's
going to be worth more.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm looking at it that kind of from that lens. So what do you guys think?
Johnny, what do you think?
Okay, I see what you're saying. So if you were to put $500 into Juan Soto right now, or $500 into Bryce Harper, which is going to net you a better return versus the other side.
And do the same thing with Bichette.
Right.
And Vladdy.
Better investment than Juan Soto. Wow. Well, that really changed it. I'm gonna go with Bichette. I think we mentioned this before. If you look at these questions based on player, I think Juan Soto is going onto a different stratosphere than everybody else. So it's very easy to pick Bichette. If we're talking, let's say, just strictly investment, it gets a lot closer, but I'll still pick Bichette. And I think I say that because, number one, Bichette had a monster year and it was super under the radar because of what Vladdy did. And maybe this is just what's to come. He's going to be Robin to Vladdy's Batman, and he's just never going to get that respect. It could be that is the case. But I think the Jays are going to, we're all bullish that the Jays are going to be pretty good. I think you guys mentioned it. They were like second in terms of odds on favorites to win it. I think the team success is going to bring everybody's values up this year. And I think Bichette was just so low that he has a lot to climb. Some of his hiring cards, I've seen some pretty big movements, man. Like they're not as cheap as they were like 5 months ago. Like if you're talking like colored first moment autos and stuff like that. They're not cheap, but some of his like smaller stuff like sapphires and they're not small, but let's just say like purple refractors and stuff. They're very easily attainable. So I'm gonna go with Bichette, but it's a great question.
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. Like last season when we were talking about in that episode, if you guys remember, who's gonna win the NL MVP? It was versus Tatis versus Harper. Right. And we're like, friggin' Tatis, of course.
Yeah.
It's like, and then we underestimate Harper all the time. And I feel like I'm going to be underestimating Harper even now because I'm choosing Bichette again over Harper. Maybe it has more to say with Juan Soto being that I feel like that much better. But at the same time, I understand and realize I'm in a way underestimating Harper again. But for the reasons that John just mentioned, like I think Bichette was really overshadowed, and I think he still has room to grow. And in terms of price and affordability, it's low enough that I could see a significant jump. Whereas with Harper, on the other hand, like he's had an MVP season and his prices haven't fluctuated that much. Like I don't see that volatility that I would have expected after an incredible season that Harper had last year. And I think for Bichette, it's still possible. I might be wrong, but I'm hoping that's the case. Having said that, Vladdy just hit 2 home runs today, so
yeah, that's why it's like, how can he? Will Bichette always be the Messier to Gretzky?
Yeah,
and that's what worries me. And just I threw this out there because I thought Soto's prices are always high, and I think Harper's prices are so low, right? So. I'm gonna go Bryce Harper is a better investment. I think Bryce already like with the MVP last year, I think it changed a lot of things for me long term with Bryce Harper.
Right.
It was one of those things where it's like he's on the same trajectory as Trout, in terms of, how many years he's been in the league, and if he could stay healthy, what way Bryce Harper is going to kind of go in his next 10 years or so, right? So for me, it's a big step that he's made even at the beginning of the season. But I agree with you guys that Bichette, is a great investment still. But I think just right now, Bryce Harper would be the better investment over Soto in the hot take. So
I can see that for sure, though.
Yeah.
Good one. All right, Johnny.
Yeah. So I'm going to go the Brooklyn Nets are overrated and aren't going to win jack, or the Memphis Grizzlies are overrated and aren't going to win jack.
Man, that's a tough one. Clark, you could go attack this one.
Is Ben Simmons playing? What's the deal?
Possibly. I don't feel like he's going to be ready for games 1 through 3, but he can make a late appearance.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it, but oh man, the Nets they just have too much talent that I can't bet against them. Like if I was a Celtics fan, I'm nervous. That I'm not getting out of the first round as the second seed. Like It's kind of crazy that Nets are 7th seed, and it's mostly because of Kyrie Irving not playing every game and injuries to Durant. But now that they're both playing, like, who cares about the regular season? So, I'm gonna go with the Grizzlies aren't gonna win jack. I think, like they have a good team, but like it's one of those things. Maybe the playoffs are a different beast, and they're gonna find out. I might be wrong, but
I'm gonna agree with Clark, man. In playoff time, I want to root for the young guys, but come crunch time, especially where Brooklyn's seated, I think they're tough. It's gonna be tough to get by them in playoff mode, and you have an inexperienced Memphis team. I think Ja sometimes is over emotional, irrational. I think that's going to be different for him, especially in playoff. But this is when big time players step up. So it's going to definitely be exciting. But I'm going to agree with Clark and say Memphis ain't going to win crap.
I thought this was going to be a lot tougher. I'm going to agree with you guys. I want to hate on the Nets. Like, I think in my heart, I'm like, I think they're overrated. I think they really are. But I don't know if I'm just being a hater or if I actually
usually the case.
Yeah. But the Nets at the same time, in being a hater, they're scary, man. They could be overrated, but at the same time they could just trample over people. Like you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to maybe get a flop, but you're also going to get a complete domination, right? So they're a little bit scary, and I think Grizzlies, people are hyped on Ja. I think they might be a bit of an overrated second overall kind of team where they are strong. On paper, they have great talent, but again, they're really young, and they're going to go up against, is it the T-Wolves, who just got a big jack in adrenaline, and they've also got a young, pretty exciting team as well with some, like Pat Beverly really came out and he's showing why, I think he's pretty annoying, but there's no question. There's no question he plays some serious defense, right? So they're going to be up against some like big time trash talking and a T-Wolves team that has nothing to lose. So I don't know if I truly believe in either of these, but I think for the sake of my cat bet, I'm going to say the Grizzlies are overrated, and I could see them maybe getting disappointed.
Sweep. All right. Okay. I'll finish off the show with my 1v1, my pick one. Marvel cards are a fad versus F1 cards are a fad. And I say that because the Marvel cards, like, there's been reports where certain sets have seen like a significant decrease lately in terms of sales.
Pullback.
And F1 cards, like, I don't know if it's just me, but their season 2 hasn't gotten as much hype, or not a lot of people are talking about it as season 1, or sorry, last season 3
series, right?
Yeah, than the one that just came out. So I don't know if it's like if it's a Netflix effect, and if they stop producing F1 series, then what happens, right?
Right.
Anyway.
Ooh, I'm gonna say you said overrated or
Fad. So
fad. I'm gonna say man, it's tough because I guess Marvel has some iconic cards, so that has that going for them. But I believe there was a huge retraction, obviously, in Marvel cards, and I still think it's on a positive swing still in the macro lens. But I'm gonna say F1 cards are here to stay. I think print runs are too low, and too many people are in the game now, and people believe in F1. So I'm gonna say Marvel's the fad at this point.
Okay. Interesting.
This is okay. First of all, let's remember that this is a hot take. I don't know if we truly believe in any of these statements.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go the opposite way, and I'm gonna say F1 cards are a fad, and I probably take a lot of heat for that. But I'm gonna mention like F1. The first release is great because I think a lot of the popular characters are in the first release. So you got Lewis Hamilton, quote unquote rookie card, Verstappen, George Russell. And then I think as you keep going on into seasons, and let's say the Netflix show ends and it's not mainstream. So now guys like us that are complete casuals, we're going to have to learn up and coming characters and narratives by watching F1 and watching it fairly regularly, right? You're not going to know the latest rookies and all that stuff. And I think as we go on, it's going to be a lot harder for casuals to follow what's hot in F1, especially if it's not being pumped to the moon by every YouTuber on the planet, right? So if it's just like a pretty normal release, it's really going to be hard to really be like, okay, what's the latest and greatest? Who's the chase card? I think it's going to become a lot different. Whereas Marvel, I think obviously there was a huge run up that was bound to just come crashing down. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Marvel's, fad is guys our age, like, going back into the nostalgia and looking at those 1990 Marvel Impel cards from back in the day. And you're like, man, I used to collect those, and you're wanting it. And then, seeing some of the PMG branding come into Marvel, which has really made it explode. So it does look faddish as well, like a fad as well. But Marvel is characters that we can relate to because we've watched it. You see it in movies. And I think as newer releases come out, it's going to be really easy to follow. Like the latest releases that come out, I would, for me, I would be more interested in Marvel PMG that comes out, or like Marvel, what was the latest set that came out? Anyways, whatever newer like premium Marvel, let's say Topps Chrome Marvel or something comes out, mm-hmm. Upper Deck owns Marvel, so that's not the case. But I'm just saying, let's say some kind of like popular Chromium style.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? Comes out. I think for guys like us that are casual, I think it's very easy to follow, right? You're going to chase Wolverine. You're going to chase Spider-Man. You're going to chase. It's going to be fun and a fun rip because you can understand it. Whereas F1, as you get into Series 3 and Series 4 and year release number 5, it's going to be really hard to follow unless you're a big fan. And I know F1 has a humongous following, and this is probably more of a North American take. But, who knows? I think it feels like F1 fans who knows if true F1 fans are even into cards. There might be more into apparel and getting jerseys and like helmets and stuff like that. So I don't know. But I think in the long run, I feel like F1 cards could be more of a fad than Marvel cards. And I'm sure I'm going to get hate for that, but that's what I'm going to go with.
How dare you? All right. I think, no, I hear you. And actually, I'm going to side with John on this one. I think it's more likely that F1 cards are a fad. And like I said at the very beginning, if Netflix ends their series, it's hard to get exposure. I know there's a huge international audience for F1 racing that love the sport. But, to be honest, I think the card market is still predominantly number one in North America, right? Like, I think it'll grow internationally, the card market I'm talking about, but that's going to take time. And if F1 dies down before then I don't know if it has that traction or it will have that momentum to sustain itself in the long run. But hopefully I'm wrong. F1, we just said at the beginning at the local card show, a lot of F1 cards available at different booths. So hopefully that momentum keeps up and people, and I know people that are actually getting into F1 racing. So there might be that chance that, they'll look for that, those events even after the Netflix series is over. But
like real organic growth in North America.
Yeah, sure, exactly. So we'll see what happens. All right, that is the end of our show. Thank you all for listening to episode 49. We're so appreciative of everyone listening. And if you did enjoy this podcast, please give us 5 stars or leave us a great review. And we'll see you again next Tuesday. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.